The oak-paneled boardroom hummed with tension thick enough to carve. 11 pairs of eyes, ranging from nervous to resigned, were fixed on Vanessa Caldwell. Her gaze, a piercing dark brown, swept over the quarterly projections displayed on the smart screen. A faint tremor in the data points, signifying a dip in the South American market. "Explain this," she commanded, her voice cutting through the hushed air like a sharpened blade. Her finger, adorned with a single platinum band, tapped the screen. "The proposed solution is a 10% reduction in our regional marketing spend. This is not a solution. It is a bandage on a gaping wound." Terrence, the head of global marketing, shifted uncomfortably in his leather chair, his broad shoulders tensing beneath his tailored navy blazer. "Vanessa, we believe a more aggressive approach risks alienating." "Alienating who, Terrence? The competition? Our shareholders?" Vanessa leaned forward, her perfectly tailored charcoal suit jacket creasing subtly. "Caldwell Industries doesn't believe. Caldwell Industries acts. We will initiate a 25% reduction in the South American division's operational budget, effective immediately. Furthermore, we will reallocate all remaining marketing resources to the emerging Asian markets. The projected Q3 growth in that sector justifies the investment. Any objections?" Her stare dared anyone to speak. Her dark eyes moved from face to face around the table, pausing just long enough on each person to make them feel individually assessed and found wanting. Silence reigned. The kind of silence that was not agreement, but the rigid quiet of people who had learned through painful experience that challenging Vanessa Caldwell was an exercise in professional self-destruction. Good. Get it done. The meeting concluded with the same abrupt efficiency with which it had begun. Chairs scraped back against the polished hardwood floor. Folders were gathered with hurried hands. Terrence exchanged a brief loaded glance with Dominique from operations, a glance that said everything about their shared exhaustion and nothing about their willingness to voice it. They filed out in a procession of expensive shoes and suppressed opinions, leaving Vanessa alone in the boardroom with the lingering scent of coffee and the hum of the ventilation system. Later, as the city lights of downtown Charlotte began to twinkle outside her penthouse office window on the 43rd floor, Vanessa ran a hand over the cool glass. The skyline stretched before her like a circuit board, illuminated pathways connecting nodes of commerce and ambition. Sentimentality was a luxury she could not afford, especially not in a company founded on the principle of relentless expansion. The bottom line was not just a number. It was the pulse of Caldwell Industries, a living entity that demanded unwavering discipline. Employees were assets, valuable components in a larger, intricate machine. Their purpose was to contribute to the machine's optimal function, not to introduce unpredictable variables like personal needs or emotional appeals. Policies were the gears, meticulously crafted over years to ensure smooth, predictable operation. Every rule existed for a reason. Deviations were inefficiencies, and inefficiency was a cancer she would excise without hesitation, no matter how small the tumor, no matter how sympathetic the circumstances surrounding its growth. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Her assistant Keisha entered looking flustered, her usually immaculate box braids slightly disheveled. "Miss Caldwell, I apologize, but my son has a high fever. The sitter just called and I need to—" Vanessa turned, her expression unyielding. "Keisha, your shift ends at 7. It is currently 6:45. Is the Q4 report filed?" Keisha's shoulders slumped beneath her cream-colored blouse. "Almost, but—" "Then finish it. Caldwell Industries policy dictates that all tasks assigned for the day are completed before departure. Personal emergencies are not exceptions to company policy. The report is due by close of business." Her tone left no room for appeal. She had learned this lesson from her father, Carlton Caldwell, who had built the original company with calloused hands and an iron will, who had taught her that the moment you made an exception for one person, you created an expectation for everyone. Keisha's face, etched with a mixture of distress and defeat, was a familiar sight. Vanessa simply watched her retreat, the soft click of the door marking the return to her solitary dominion. The fluorescent lights hummed a steady, lonely drone above Marcus Washington's desk in the accounting department on the 14th floor. It was past 7, and the floor was a silent expanse of empty cubicles and dark monitors, save for the rhythmic clicking of his keyboard. 9 years. 9 years he had given to this company, meticulously balancing ledgers, forecasting budgets, and dissecting quarterly reports until the numbers sang a clear, coherent tune. He double-checked the final Q3 projections, a complex tapestry of figures he had woven, ensuring every thread was perfect, every calculation unimpeachable. His work was a quiet testament to his precision, a silent promise kept to himself and to the demanding standards of Caldwell Industries. A faint smile touched his lips as his gaze drifted to a small laminated drawing tucked beneath his monitor, held in place by a strip of tape he replaced every few weeks when it started to curl. A stick figure with wild curly hair holding the hand of a taller, more stoic figure. The shorter figure wore what appeared to be a purple cape. "Me and Daddy," Amara had proudly declared, presenting it to him with a gap-toothed grin, her dark brown eyes shining with absolute certainty that this was a masterpiece worthy of museum display. Amara. Her name was a warmth in his chest, a constant gentle current beneath the surface of his disciplined life. He remembered this morning, the soft weight of her head against his shoulder as he carefully parted and braided her thick natural hair for school, his large fingers working with a gentleness that would have surprised anyone who knew him only as the quiet, methodical accountant on 14. The sleepy murmur of her voice, asking whether butterflies dreamed, whether the moon was lonely. His own promise to read her favorite space book tonight, the one with the black girl astronaut on the cover that she had insisted on reading so many times he had memorized entire passages. Being a single father was not just a role, it was the core of him, the unwavering anchor in his life since Jasmine's death 4 years ago. A brain aneurysm, sudden and merciless, taking her on an ordinary Wednesday morning while Amara was at preschool and Marcus was at his desk running variance reports. One phone call had divided his life into before and after, and in the after, Amara had become everything. Every late night, every perfectly balanced sheet, every early morning rush through the kitchen making lunches and checking backpacks was for her. A brick laid in the foundation of their small, secure world. He pulled up his attendance record, a digital scroll of flawless consistency stretching back 9 years. Not a single sick day, not a late arrival, not an absence. It was a point of quiet pride, not a boast, but a confirmation of his unwavering reliability. He was the man who showed up, who delivered, who never faltered. He closed the spreadsheet, powered down his computer, and gathered his things, sliding Amara's drawing carefully into the inner pocket of his messenger bag. He was tired, bone-tired in the way that only single parents truly understand. But the thought of Amara waiting for him filled him with renewed purpose. He locked his office door, the click echoing in the deserted corridor, and stepped out into the cool evening air of Charlotte, ready to transition from dedicated employee to devoted father. The fluorescent lights hummed their usual monotonous tune the following Thursday morning, as Marcus meticulously reviewed final figures for the quarterly report. He smoothed the edges of the crisp white form he had held onto all morning, running his thumb along the paper's edge as if testing its worthiness to carry the request it contained. A request for a single day off. His heart hammered a rhythm against his ribs that felt strangely out of sync with the quiet office. He had typed out his reasoning with careful precision. To attend daughter Amara Washington's inaugural school play, The Enchanted Garden, at Riverside Academy. Performance details attached. He had even included a detailed schedule of how he had front-loaded his work for the entire week, ensuring absolutely no disruption to his responsibilities. Swallowing hard, Marcus rose and walked the familiar path to the executive suite on the 43rd floor, his shoes making soft sounds on the carpeted hallway that felt louder than they should have. He placed the form gently on the polished mahogany surface of the assistant's desk. "For Miss Caldwell, please," he murmured, his voice a little hoarse. It is for the 23rd. Later that afternoon, the same form lay on Vanessa Caldwell's imposing desk. She picked it up with a delicate, almost clinical touch, her eyes scanning Marcus's neat handwriting, noting the attached schedule, the highlighted section about the school play. Washington. A day off. A faint, almost imperceptible frown creased her brow. Her internal monologue was swift and unyielding. Company policy is clear. Unscheduled leave is disruptive. Performance reviews and attendance records are paramount. Personal events cannot supersede corporate responsibilities. The moment one exception is granted, a precedent is established, and precedents are the enemies of order. Her gaze drifted to the attached program for the Enchanted Garden, a children's play decorated with clip art flowers and a photograph of smiling children in costumes. Frivolous. Her lips thinned into a resolute line. She wrote a single word across the top of the form in her distinctive, sharp handwriting and set it aside. The chime of the inter-office system pierced the late afternoon quiet. Marcus Washington, please report to my office. Keisha's voice, crisp and unyielding, announced through the speaker. Marcus felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had hoped for an email at least, the distance and dignity of a written response he could read in private. He walked into the assistant's antechamber where Keisha sat behind her immaculate desk, her expression devoid of warmth, her dark eyes meeting his briefly before dropping to the document in front of her. Ms. Caldwell has reviewed your request, Mr. Washington, she stated, her voice flat and professional, carrying none of the sympathy that her eyes briefly betrayed before she controlled them. She pushed the form back across the desk. It has been denied. Her exact words were unacceptable. Company policy dictates strict adherence to work schedules. Any absence on the 23rd will be considered unexcused and will result in disciplinary action. The air seemed to grow heavy, pressing down on Marcus. His meticulously planned day, Amara's shining moment on stage in her flower costume, that they had spent 3 weekends making together from green fabric and wire and tissue paper petals, all dissolving into Vanessa's cold, dismissive words. He picked up the rejected form, feeling the bent corners beneath his fingers, feeling a cold dread seep into his bones like winter water finding cracks in a foundation. He nodded once, said nothing, and walked back to his desk. The corridor had never felt so long. The vibrant crayon drawing, a lopsided sun radiating orange and yellow beams, a stick figure clutching an oversized balloon, lay on the kitchen counter of their modest apartment in Oakwood Heights, a bright, searing reminder. Amara's scrawled signature was underlined with 3 hearts, each drawn with the intense concentration of someone creating something important. Marcus's thumb traced one, the glossy paper cool beneath his skin. Vanessa's curt email, a follow-up to the in-person rejection, replayed in his mind with each word a percussive blow. Operational necessity. Your presence is required. No exceptions. This was not mere inconvenience. It felt like a direct assault on the promise he had made to Amara to attend Riverside Academy's annual Parent Palooza, her first big performance, the culmination of weeks of rehearsal during which she had practiced her lines at the dinner table and in the bathtub and while brushing her teeth, her small voice giving life to words about gardens and growing and the magic of believing in yourself. A thick, icy dread washed over him. His career, the stability he had painstakingly rebuilt after Jasmine's death, the steady income that paid for Amara's school and her dance classes and her art supplies, now felt like a fragile pane of glass poised to shatter. He closed his eyes and pictured Vanessa's unyielding gaze, the way she had dismissed his 9 years of perfect attendance as utterly insignificant when weighed against a policy written in a manual that probably sat unread on a shelf in the Human Resources office. One day, he murmured to the empty kitchen, the words tasting like ash. One single day for my daughter. When he opened his eyes, the drawing still radiated innocent joy, starkly at odds with his internal storm. The lopsided sun kept shining. The stick figures kept holding hands. The hearts kept beating in crayon beneath his daughter's name. This was not merely about a day off. It was about Amara, her face beaming with anticipation as she described her part, a magical flower that taught the other plants how to grow by singing to them. Her happiness, so pure and unburdened, served as his life's unwavering anchor. Everything else suddenly felt secondary, brittle, and inconsequential. No, he whispered, the decision crystallizing within him like ice forming on a window, clear and sharp and irreversible. The company, Vanessa, the looming fallout, it all receded, replaced by the vivid image of Amara's hopeful eyes. He would not let her down. Not for a job, not for anything. He would face the consequences, whatever they entailed. Later that evening, after her bath, Amara skipped into the living room, her damp curls framing her round face like a crown of dark spirals, her pajamas featuring small astronauts floating among stars. "Daddy, are you coming to Parent Palooza?" she chirped, her voice a hopeful melody that filled every corner of the apartment. Marcus knelt on the carpet, bringing himself to her eye level, and pulled her into a tight embrace, inhaling the sweet scent of coconut shampoo. "Yes, sweet pea," he said, his voice thick with emotion. He did not try to hide because he had promised himself after Jasmine died that he would never hide his feelings from his daughter. "I will be there. I would not miss it for the world." Her face ignited, brilliant as a miniature sun. She squeezed him back, a small, powerful hug delivered with the full force of a 7-year-old who believed her father was the strongest person in the universe. "Yay!" she cheered, pulling away to perform a joyful little dance, spinning in circles until she got dizzy and collapsed giggling onto the couch cushions. Marcus watched her, a quiet strength settling deep in his chest. The path ahead might be rocky, littered with consequences he could already predict. But witnessing her unadulterated joy, watching her dance in their small living room, with absolute confidence that her father would keep his promise, he knew he had made the only choice that truly mattered. The crisp ring of the intercom startled Vanessa the following morning, breaking the silence of her meticulously organized office. "Miss Caldwell, Marcus Washington is not at his desk this morning," Keisha's voice stated, devoid of inflection. Vanessa's jaw tightened. "Confirmed absent, then?" "Yes, Miss Caldwell. He has not responded to calls or emails." A cold satisfaction bloomed in her chest. "Very well. Draft a termination letter for Marcus Washington, effective immediately. State gross insubordination and neglect of duties as the primary reasons." Her voice was steady, unwavering. This was not about vindictiveness. It was about upholding the standards she had painstakingly built. A company could not function if employees believed they could disregard policy without consequence. Her father, Carlton Caldwell, had instilled that discipline in her through years of observation. She was merely following his example, ensuring the machinery ran smoothly without sentimental obstructions. She leaned back, her gaze sweeping over the panoramic city view. Charlotte spread below, a sprawling testament to ambition and order. There was no room for exceptions, no space for individual whims to disrupt the collective rhythm. Marcus Washington had made his choice. This was just business, a necessary excision to maintain the health of the whole. She felt a surge of professional pride for her own decisive leadership. Miles away, in the auditorium of Riverside Academy on the east side of Charlotte, the vibrant notes of a piano soared through the decorated space, weaving a tapestry of sound that held the audience captive. Paper flowers hung from the ceiling on fishing line, twisting slowly in the air currents, and the stage was transformed into a garden of painted backdrops and fabric leaves and cardboard trees the children had helped create during art class. Marcus sat in the third row, his large frame occupying the small folding chair, with an awkwardness he did not notice because every fiber of his attention was directed at the stage. Amara, dressed in her green costume with tissue paper petals radiating from her collar like a crown of color, stood center stage with her classmates, her voice rising clear and strong as she sang about growing and believing. Her small hand had been nestled in his when they walked into the auditorium together, and she had looked up at him with an expression of such pure trust that he had to blink rapidly to keep his composure. A genuine smile softened his face, a rare sight in recent weeks. He watched her perform with the rapt attention of a man witnessing something sacred, something that transcended the mundane calculations of risk and reward that governed the rest of his existence. For this brief, precious moment, the weight of responsibility and the looming shadow of the terminated employment he knew was waiting were forgotten. He was simply a father, sharing a moment of pure delight with his daughter, utterly present in a way that 9 years of corporate dedication had never required of him. The world outside the auditorium seemed small and distant and fundamentally less important than the sound of Amara's voice filling the room with a song about flowers, learning to believe in themselves. He was utterly unaware that the delicate balance of his professional life had already crumbled, dictated by a cold voice and a decisive click 43 floors above the city. The ballroom of the Monarch Hotel in uptown Charlotte shimmered on a warm Saturday evening 3 weeks later, a symphony of hushed conversations and clinking crystal. Vanessa, resplendent in an emerald gown that caught the ambient light with every subtle movement, navigated the throng with practiced ease. Her smile, a carefully cultivated blend of warmth and professionalism, never wavered as she exchanged pleasantries with city council members, venture capitalists, and the usual philanthropic elite. Each handshake, each brief, sparkling interaction was a strategic move, a quiet affirmation of her place in the hierarchy. Tonight, she was searching for the man who mattered most. Her father, Carlton Caldwell, chairman emeritus of the Caldwell Group, was the gravitational center of this opulent universe. He was usually easy to spot, a beacon of composed authority, his silver hair cropped close, his dark skin carrying the dignified weathering of 72 years. He was often surrounded by a deferential circle of admirers who orbited him like planets around a sun. Tonight, it took her longer. He was not at his usual spot near the podium, nor mingling by the bar. Finally, her gaze settled on a secluded table in a quieter alcove, bathed in the soft glow of a single candle. There he was, and to her surprise, his posture was relaxed in a way she rarely saw. A genuine smile, not the tight, polite one he reserved for business, played on his lips. He was leaning in, listening intently to someone across the table, giving that person the full weight of his attention. A jolt coursed through Vanessa as the other person shifted, turning slightly, the broad shoulders beneath a well-fitted dark suit, the familiar close-cropped fade, the quiet confidence in his posture. Her breath hitched. Marcus Washington. The same Marcus Washington she had denied a single day off. The same man she had terminated for gross insubordination. The very man who should have been at home updating his resume. Not here. Not laughing with her father as if they were old friends sharing a private joke the rest of the world was not invited to hear. He was laughing now, a deep, easy sound, and her father's hand, in a gesture that twisted a knot in Vanessa's stomach, rested briefly, almost affectionately, on Marcus's arm. The gesture her father reserved for people he genuinely respected. She had seen him make it with business partners he had known for decades. She had rarely seen him make it with her. Confusion battled with disbelief. Then a cold, hard anger began to curdle in her gut. What was he doing here? And why was her father looking at him like that? Vanessa strode toward the table, her emerald gown trailing behind her. Marcus, his head tilted back in laughter, looked utterly at ease in a way she had never seen during his 9 years in her employ. Gone was the careful posture of the dutiful accountant. In his place was someone comfortable, confident, present, a man fully inhabiting his own skin. She stopped abruptly beside them, casting a long shadow over their shared warmth. "Marcus," she said, her voice cutting through the ambient noise like a shard of glass. He flinched, his smile dissolving. "I think you owe me an explanation." Her gaze dared him to deny it. Carlton set down his champagne flute with unhurried grace, his brow furrowed as he took in Vanessa's rigid posture and Marcus's discomfort. "Vanessa, darling, what is wrong? You look as though you have seen a ghost." He turned to Marcus with a warm smile. "Marcus, you have not properly met my daughter Vanessa, though I imagine you two have crossed paths." The casualness of his tone, The way he looked at Marcus as if he were a valued friend rather than a recently dismissed employee made Vanessa's blood run cold. Crossed paths, she echoed. Father, what is he doing here? He was fired. By me. Carlton's smile remained, though amusement played around his lips. He placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. Fired? Oh, Vanessa. Marcus is not simply here. He has been an invaluable advisor to me for months now. Vanessa stared. The sophisticated hum of the ballroom seemed to blur. An advisor? She managed. Carlton nodded, his gaze softening as he looked at Marcus. Indeed. Quietly, diligently, he has been working with me on the Caldwell Legacy Philanthropic Project. A brilliant mind dedicated to making a real difference. He has been handling the entire operational framework for the Foundation's expansion. I specifically asked him to keep it under wraps until we were ready for the official announcement. His integrity, his commitment, it is truly commendable. Carlton turned to Vanessa, his amusement gone, replaced by profound disappointment that settled over his features like a shadow crossing the sun. You see, Vanessa, while you were busy upholding company policy, Marcus was busy changing the world. The words landed like stones dropped into still water. Carlton continued, his voice cutting through the ambient noise with quiet precision. Marcus and I had a lovely conversation a few weeks back. He mentioned a predicament. His daughter Amara had a crucial school play, a part she had worked incredibly hard for, rehearsing every night, making her costume with her father on weekends. Vanessa felt the cold knot tighten. The memory of Marcus's earnest plea, the carefully typed form, the attached schedule demonstrating his preparation, the way she had dismissed it with a single word, flashed through her mind. He told me how important it was to him to be there for her, Carlton continued, his gaze unwavering, and how he had unfortunately run into a rather rigid interpretation of company policy regarding personal leave. A policy that made no allowance for the fact that this man had given 9 flawless years of service without asking for a single accommodation. Vanessa's cheeks flushed beneath her dark brown skin. It struck me, Carlton said, that a man who dedicates himself so completely to his child, who understands that some things in this life are more important than attendance records and quarterly reports, possesses a rare kind of integrity. A man who understands true value beyond the bottom line. He paused, allowing the words to hang in the air. Caldwell Industries unfortunately was not equipped to appreciate that particular strength in Marcus, but I personally found it invaluable. He turned to Marcus with a benevolent smile. So I offered Marcus an advisory role consulting on my personal investment portfolio and leading the operational design of the Caldwell Legacy Foundation. A flexible arrangement, one where Amara's school plays or any other significant family event will always take precedence. His insights are remarkably sharp, and the results have been more than satisfactory. Marcus offered Vanessa a small, almost apologetic smile containing no malice, no gloating. Simply the smile of a man who had found solid ground after being pushed off a cliff, and who bore no grudge because the fall had led him to a better place. The grace of that smile only deepened Vanessa's mortification. The man she had so casually dismissed was now not only gainfully employed by her own father, but lauded for the very values she had trampled. She had not just fired an employee, she had overlooked a man of profound character. The champagne tasted like ash in her mouth. Carlton turned his gaze to Vanessa once more. His smile carried a weight she recognized from childhood, from the rare but devastating moments when he had sat her down to explain that she had fallen short. Vanessa, he began, his voice soft but resonant. You always had such a sharp mind for business, but sometimes, dear, I worry you let the numbers obscure the people. That in your pursuit of operational perfection, you have forgotten that the machine you are optimizing is made of human beings, not components. He gestured toward Marcus, who had moved away and was sharing a conversation with a small group near the fountain, his posture relaxed, radiating quiet joy. That young man understood the value of time, not the kind that shows up on timesheets, but the kind that truly matters. the irreplaceable moments that define a life. A company policy, no matter how well intended, should never eclipse a father's desire to be present for his child. Vanessa felt a flush creep up her neck. Her father's words, gentle as they were, landed with the impact of stones dropped from height, creating ripples of discomfort and dawning understanding. She watched Marcus across the room, unburdened, laughing freely, radiating contentment she had never seen during his 9 years under her leadership. The stark contrast to her own rigid approach was undeniable and damning. Later, finding Marcus alone by the dessert table, where an elaborate display of pastries gleamed under warm lights, Vanessa approached on feet that felt heavier than her designer heels could account for. Her heart was a tangled knot of regret and professional pride. "Marcus," she began, her voice unusually hesitant, stripped of the commanding tone that was her professional signature. "I wanted to apologize about the day off, about the termination. I realize now." She trailed off, searching for the right words and finding that corporate jargon suddenly felt hollow, inadequate for the weight of what she needed to express. Marcus turned, a serene expression on his face. His dark brown eyes met hers with a calmness that spoke of a man who had made peace with his circumstances. "Vanessa," he said, his tone devoid of bitterness. "It is all right. I understand you had to uphold company policy. And truthfully," he offered a small knowing smile. "It was the best thing that could have happened." He gestured at the opulent ballroom. "My daughter had a wonderful performance. I was there in the 3rd row. I saw her sing. I saw her face light up when she spotted me in the audience. And I found a path that allows me to be both a committed father and a valued professional. Your father has been incredibly generous, and the work we are doing with the foundation is more meaningful than anything I have done in my career." His acceptance was gracious, yet firm. A clear boundary drawn not with hostility, but with the quiet authority of a man who had discovered his worth and would no longer allow anyone to define it for him. He had moved on. The chapter was closed. He had no interest in reopening it, not out of anger, but out of the simple recognition that he had outgrown it. Vanessa felt a cold wave wash over her. His forgiveness was not an invitation to return. It was an acknowledgement of a closed chapter, a gentle but unmistakable statement that the door between them had shut and he was content on his side of it. She had walked over expecting the familiar script of corporate conflict resolution. But Marcus was not interested in restoration. He was interested in transformation. She mumbled a goodbye, and excusing herself from the lingering guests, walked through the ballroom toward the exit. The jazz ensemble played something slow and contemplative as she pushed through the heavy doors and stepped into the cool night air of Charlotte. The city lights blurred as she stood on the sidewalk outside the Monarch Hotel. Her father's words echoed in her mind with the persistence of a bell that had been struck and could not be unrung. Marcus's quiet strength, the image of him laughing freely in her father's company with a joy she had never inspired in anyone, the memory of Amara's crayon drawing she had never seen but could somehow picture with perfect clarity. It all swirled within her like ingredients in a recipe she did not know how to follow. Had she truly been so blind? So consumed by the bottom line that she had forgotten the human element entirely? So dedicated to the machinery of efficiency that she had failed to notice the gears she was optimizing were made of people with children and dreams and promises that mattered more than quarterly projections. She thought of Marcus kneeling on the carpet of his apartment, pulling his daughter into his arms, promising to be there. She thought of Amara's face lighting up when she saw her father in the 3rd row. She thought of the 9 years of perfect attendance she had treated as expected, rather than extraordinary. She thought of Keisha's son with the fever and the 15 minutes of remaining work she had valued more than a mother's instinct to rush to her sick child. She thought of Terrence flinching in the boardroom, of Dominique's loaded glance, of every employee who had ever walked out of her office with slumped shoulders and diminished spirit. She thought of all the moments she had chosen policy over people and called it leadership. and standing alone on the sidewalk in the warm Charlotte night, surrounded by the indifferent bustle of a city that did not pause for personal reckonings, Vanessa Caldwell felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt the ground shift beneath her feet, not with the dramatic tremor of an earthquake, but with the subtle, irreversible movement of tectonic plates adjusting their position deep below the surface, changing the landscape in ways that would take time to become visible, but that could never be undone. She did not know yet what she would build on this new ground. She did not know how to be the kind of leader her father was describing, one who valued people as much as performance, who understood that flexibility was not weakness and compassion was not inefficiency. But she knew, with a clarity that cut through the confusion like the first light of dawn cutting through darkness, that the woman who had written unacceptable across Marcus Washington's request and felt nothing was someone she no longer wanted to be. The night air carried the faint scent of magnolia blossoms from the trees lining the boulevard, sweet and persistent, the kind of fragrance you only noticed when you slowed down enough to breathe deeply. Vanessa stood there for a long moment, breathing deeply for what felt like the first time